Have a look at this beautiful gown. It's categorised here in the curator's choice section, but it's also a period dress, which means it could be included in the costume section upstairs. And we could take it a stage further. We could say that it's the third item here on the first floor. Here in the museum, they categorise the same item in many different ways. The same thing happens to our memory. For example, we might know someone. We could remember them as a friend. We could remember them as someone we meet on Tuesday nights, or we could remember them as someone who comes from a particular town. The more links and connections we make with something, then the more likely we are to remember it.
Now I'm going to really test your memory. Do you remember the objects in the National Museum that Derek showed you earlier? See how many you can remember now. So, how many did you remember? 3? 4? Don't worry, it's perfectly normal to only remember very few. Let's see if you can remember them better. We're going to show you the objects again. This time, when you see them, make a mental picture of something that object is supposed to do. For instance, imagine yourself lifting up the gold cup as if you've won a prize, or see red roses being put into the vase. Visualize the train trundling along the track. Imagine them doing something they're supposed to do in your mind's eye. Memory works a bit like flypaper, things stick to it. Visualizing the objects doing things they were supposed to do made the memories more active and therefore more likely to stick to the flypaper. We call this active learning, and active learning helps you remember things better. Everyone can get in the habit of active learning. It's guaranteed to improve your memory.
You may remember the phrase, you probably heard it at school, to learn something off by heart, like 9 times tables. Well, when it comes to memory, when you say something or do something over and over again, it's really effective. It's how you transfer information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. Now, if you combine that with a useful device, like, say, a rhyme, you've got a powerful tool for remembering information.
Mnemonics are memory aids, such as rhymes or words to help us remember something. For example, you may have heard this rhyme for remembering how to spell the word difficulty. Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. FFI, Mrs. C, Mrs. U, Mrs. LTY. Repeating this rhyme helps you to remember it, and therefore how to spell difficulty. Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. FFI, Mrs. C, Mrs. U, Mrs. LTY. Memory aids are particularly useful for spelling unusual or difficult words. They can also be used to distinguish between two words. Look at the two words here and here. They sound the same, but have different meanings and are spelt differently. You hear with your ear. The word here contains the word ear. Now look at the words lose and loose. Some people have difficulty remembering which contains one O and which contains two. If you remember the word game, my tooth is loose, you'll see that both tooth and loose contain two O's. And finally, try remembering this one. Rhymes help your memory expand, and you'll never forget how to spell the word rhyme again.
Molly's return to learning hasn't always been easy, but it has been a great success and it has turned her life around.
I didn't believe I would have done as well as I have done since I went back. It has opened up a completely new world to me that was beyond my wildest dreams. Now I'm just hungry to get more knowledge, more information. I watch television, I know what's going on all over the world. I have an interest in politics. I have an interest in what's going to happen. I have real interest now in everything. I'm living in Dunlavin with girls that's doing the course all my life. And we'd only meet and we'd say hello. Now we go set dancing in Blessing. We go shopping trips to Dublin. We go on pilgrimages. We go everywhere together.
69 and a half check.
I was a very quiet person because I hadn't been out. With leading a family, it was 24 hours a day job. So now everybody is amazed because I'm not quiet any longer. It's made a great difference to my life. It gave me my independence and my confidence. I believe that as you get older, if you get the chance to go back to get education of any kind, you should grab it with both hands. I'd love to continue this course. I'm determined to stay there as long as I get the chance. I was very lucky. There's some people that will never be as lucky as I am. But I urge anybody that gets the chance, and don't let age be a barrier. It's the greatest gift there is learning.
This piece of Delftware that Audrey's having a look at is one item in a vast collection here at the National Museum. Now, Audrey's task was to store it in such a way that it could be retrieved at any time for exhibition. And she did this by first placing a number on the reverse side of the Delftware. Audrey, can you tell me about that number?
Well, Derek, this number gives this unique object an association.
The next stage was to put that number in a file. And when Audrey wants to find it again, she would look up the file, find the number, and she'd know where the item was. This is exactly the same principle we use for memory by association. It's useful to us in many different ways, even for something as simple as remembering a shopping list. One method of remembering a long list is to link the different items together by colour. For example, for all your grocery items, think about warm yellow images of food. So yellow could be the colour. Dairy items, cheese, milk, butter, need to be kept cool, so cool blue is a good colour for them. The crisp green leaves of vegetables and fruit bring the colour green to mind. Red might remind you of meat. And finally, clean white results for things like toothpaste and washing powder make white a good choice for these items. Once you've decided on your colour codes, all you have to do then is to divide your shopping list into different colour categories. So your shopping list might look something like this, with tea, sugar and bread under yellow, milk and eggs under blue, potatoes and cabbage are green, chicken and sausages are red, and your shampoo and washing powder are listed under white. If you get a system like this perfected, your weekly shopping list could be as simple as something like this: yellow 6, blue 3, green 5, red 4, white 2, where only the numbers change from week to week. If you would like some help with anything we've covered in the programme, call 1-800 20 20 65. There's a team of specially trained tutors standing by to take your call, Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's free and confidential, so call now.
The brain must have time for new information to soak in. When you make a list or review notes or go back over something you've just learned, you're using a memory principle called consolidation. By going back over something soon after you've learned it for the first time, you can really increase your chances of remembering it. So let's put that to practice now with a summary of what we've learned in this programme.
The metric system for measuring weight is based on the kilogram. 1 kilogram is made up of 1,000 grams. 2 kilograms is 2,000 grams. 3 kilograms is 3,000 grams, and so on. The word kilogram is usually shortened to the letters kg, and gram is usually shortened to the letter g. Familiarise yourself with the metric system of weights by checking the label next time you open a can of beans or buy potatoes.
There are two types of memory, short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory can hold about 7 items. We use it to store recent information while we either organise it or discard it.
Watch out for the instruction to complete a form in capital letters when you're filling in a form. If the form has small boxes, remember you put one letter only in each box. And don't forget to leave a blank box between each word. Most forms look for the same basic information: your name, address, and perhaps your date of birth.
The first thing to understand about memory is you'll remember things you're interested in, things that are relevant, and things that you've some basic understanding of.
You can use memory aids like rhymes and word games to help you remember something. Use rhymes like Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. FFI, Mrs. C, Mrs. U, Mrs. LTY to remember how to spell the word difficulty. Or a word game like you hear with your ear, to remember the differences between two words, here and here.
To help us remember, we need to select what's important, and we'll remember much better if we group our ideas or link them in some way.
By linking different items together using colour, shape or sound, you'll find it easier to remember lists. Our example used colour to link different items on a shopping list. Yellow for groceries, blue for dairy products, green for vegetables, red for meat, and white for toiletries and cleaning items. By using your imagination, there's no end to the combinations you can come up with.
And finally, as we've just seen, summarising what you've learned is also important. That's it for this week.
Join us next week when we'll be looking at the whole area of goals and the drive to learn.